This is What's Left America, and I'm Chris Tritico.
I'm Andy Georgeson.
I'm James Campbell.
And I'm Chris Bell.
What's Left America is produced by Left Out Media and brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and friends just like Poppy Massey and hopefully someday friends like you. Today on the show, we're going to cover 4 great topics. Eagles give Trump the bird, the big chill or Trump's G7 meeting, the North Korean summit, the looming battle or the midterm elections, and we're going to close the show with Out of Left Field, just like always. Let's get into the first topic. Eagles give Trump the bird. You know, the president, just like every president in my entire lifetime, has invited the winner of the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Stanley Cup, whoever wins their championship gets invited to the White House. It's a non-political event. It doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter who wins. They get invited. They show up. It's a photo op. It's a great day for a non-political thing for the president until now. And President Trump and his battle with players who kneel during the national anthem has turned this into a political event. And the Eagles, who signed up for 80-something players, almost 90 players, I guess, were going to go. 2 days before the event, they modified the list to 10. And by all reports, President Trump was incensed, and he canceled it. And he said he canceled it because the Eagles did not agree with his position on standing for the national anthem.
But of course, all of them stood for the national anthem. They didn't have anyone who kneeled when the protest was taking place. And I was for the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and I'm for them here again because I think that if they have a strong position regarding the president, I think those are the times that we live in. And they should be able to speak their minds. And if they're not comfortable going to the White House and sort of showing support in some ways, I think they should be allowed to say, no, we're not going. It's sad, and I'm sorry that we've reached this point because I do think it's great if folks can go to the White House and it can be sort of an American event. But he's destroyed a lot of things, and this is yet another one.
Who wouldn't want to go to the White House?
Well, as we all know, Trump likes to keep score, but the reality is, professional athletes, especially African-American athletes, have had a long history of protest. Back in the 60s, John Carlos, John Lee, Lou Alcindor, now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, all protested injustices that were going on in America. That's our right to do that. And now you have professional athletes protesting injustices in the criminal justice system. And that is a statement that every athlete, every American is entitled to, whether or not they win the Super Bowl and get invited to the White House or not.
Well, the Eagles coach said that he was actually looking forward to this. And for a lot of people, regardless who the president is, this is a big event. It's a big day to get invited to the White House and get to go. And the Eagles coach was looking forward to it. But unfortunately for President Trump, size matters. And when it got down to 10, he didn't want to look bad.
That's right. He's petty, and his canceling it doesn't have anything to do with whether the players took a knee or stood and for the anthem. It just has to do with how many of the players decided they did not want to go. And I got to say, he's done a masterful job of turning this whole protest against problems in the criminal justice system into the idea that these players are unpatriotic and have a beef with the police or the military. Rather. So he's done a good job of that. He would have done a lot better if he had just let the event go on as scheduled.
No one would have even noticed.
No one would have noticed. It would have been a non-story.
With the extra people that were there.
But to give you an idea of how far we've sunk, when I went to Congress in 2003, George Bush was the president, George W. Bush. And obviously, he was a Republican, I was a Democrat. Every member, all the freshman members of Congress are invited. Every member of the freshman class, regardless Republican or Democrat, went to the White House. It was cool to go to the White House and meet the president, even though he wasn't in your party and didn't necessarily agree with you. And that's how things kind of work. Rice University won the College World Series when I was Congress, and I brought them up to Washington, and it was one of my best nights there, and they loved it. I thought they'd be like college kids and hating it and thinking this is stupid. They loved it. It should be an important event. It should be an American event.
As
the fact that he keeps being able to destroy all these things is somewhat incredible.
So a tangential point to that, Chris, is the fact that the military was paying NFL owners to have these tributes to the military during the games. And so to me, that's a bit hypocritical too. So I think that athletes have the ability to protest if they so choose. You take, for instance, Doug Baldwin with the Seattle Seahawks. He is against the protest, but has recommended other alternatives to that. So Trump likes to keep score, and that's the bottom line.
At the end, after this, and I guess this didn't work out the way the president wanted, because after this happened and on the way to the G7 summit, the president said he's going to ask the players that kneel to recommend people for him to pardon. Is this an artful dodge, a way to kind of shift the focus of this thing?
I think the president has a new toy, and he just, pressing that button, and the light is blinking, and he's so excited that that's fine, I guess. If the players recommend, because in fact, Kim Kardashian made a recommendation, and the president did the right thing. I'm not even going to say that a stop clock is right twice a day. I mean, he actually did the right thing. But there are hundreds, maybe thousands of people in jail unjustly on these nonviolent first offense petty
but so now
charges.
That's the way it's going to work.
And
If a celebrity notices your
Get my
case,
buddy out.
or
Exactly.
an NFL player wants to pick up your cause, then you can get a pardon. This is
I get my buddy out of
talked
jail.
about this
That's
last
not-
week. This is insane.
Right.
That's my point. It's not a bad thing that this woman got out of jail,
No.
out of prison. It's a good thing.
There was probably an injustice there, but
There was an injustice there.
There should be something built into the system where those types of cases can be identified and dealt with.
Maybe an
But the other-
office in the Justice Department
You
called a
think?
pardon office that can vet these things and decide who gets one and who should have one.
Oh,
Hey,
Mr.
Chris,
Traditionalist.
That's a great idea.
I'm just thinking out loud.
So old school.
But here's the thing. I think that it is more signaling from the president. These pardons, he's making a point with, Arpaio that it doesn't matter how egregious your crime is, I will pardon you, so don't turn state's evidence on me. I can pardon anybody. Kim Kardashian showed up at the White House, and I decided, yeah, I'll do that. He is signaling to potential witnesses that he has the power of the pardon, and he will use it.
Well, he's also made, this is way off the topic here, but he's also made it pretty clear he's enjoying pardoning
Absolutely.
people.
So
you
after
think
after jumping all over President Obama, he is really having a good time
So
pardoning
you
people.
think he got that idea after he pardoned the Thanksgiving turkey?
That was the first time he knew that. I
Leave
could
his
pardon.
uncle out of this. Now, let me let's close this topic out with this one question here. Is this the end, at least during President Trump's presidency, is this the end of sports teams visiting the White House? Is it over?
The NHL teams are going to go because he said that they are welcome. But what he's doing basically is further splitting.
Divide and conquer.
He's basically NHL is mostly white players. NFL, NBA, mostly black players. And basically, this is just dog whistling to the base again and to those people who
You can't always go to the dog whistle every single week.
Well, I can. As long as he's in office, I can do that. I can do that every
sadly,
single week.
it matters now, and it wouldn't have mattered. Who at this table would have cared who went to the White House to
No one.
from an
I didn't
NFL
care.
team or a Major League Baseball team?
I
No
didn't
one
even
would have cared,
watch
and that's what he's done to our country. We care about this stuff now, and I have to admit, the Astros, our home team, won. They were invited to the White House, and a few of the players went. I can't remember how many. I don't think it was a huge turnout, but I
like
love Josh Reddick. I think he's a great outfielder. But when my son pointed out to me that he was one of the people who was most excited about going to the White House, it changed my view of it.
I'm sorry.
I'm got a little taint. Little taint on that.
I'm going to push back on
that. Yeah.
That's wrong. I'm going to push back on that. Just, you can't judge people by their politics and a sports team any more than I objected to people who wouldn't listen to Barbara Streisand because she's a liberal, and it's wrong to say I don't like this guy as an athlete anymore because he likes Donald Trump.
Judging me by my politics for 30 years.
That's because you're a politician. That's different. That's different. But to say I'm not going to support this guy as an athlete, I'm not going to support this person as an entertainer because of their politics is flat wrong. And I'm pushing back on that.
I don't even think that Bell is saying that
he's going to
stop liking the guy. I just think that
stop liking him. It just put you explained it well. It put a little
on it. Yeah. A little stank on it. Okay, so here I respect
uncomfortable
the players.
with that word, but
I respect the players who decided they did not want to visit the White House.
I do too. I
don't have any problem with the Astros going or any other group of athletes, but the football players, this was a special case. It's a serious matter that they are protesting, and it just. It would be bizarre almost for them to go and shake this man's hand.
Well, what was bizarre, one final point, is the president inviting staffers from the Republican committee to show up for this ceremony faking as Eagles fans. So that was...
and sing the national anthem. But there was one guy that knelt, and that was funny. That was funny while they were singing the national anthem. I don't know if you saw that.
Can I just add this? Because this is one of the best stories ever. They've always done that. They've always called people over from the Capitol, congressional staffers and stuff to fill the White House for ceremonies.
But usually there are also athletes there.
But one of the best stories I ever heard, I forget what it was during Ronald Reagan, and Sylvester Stallone was on stage with Ronald Reagan. I don't know what the event was, but the staffer who happened to be there, and I had gone to college with him, told me the story. He happened to be standing next to Sam Donaldson. And if you all remember Sam Donaldson, that piercing voice from ABC News, he just stood behind the stage the whole time going, "Rambo. Rambo, Rambo." And Sylvester Stallone was so irritated trying to turn around, didn't know what to do because he needed to be facing forward. But I love that story.
All right.
So I'm glad I finally got to offer it to the audience.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
We're all well served for that.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. All right, let's move on to the big chill, or Trump's G7 meeting. And President Trump has dropped what did you call it a minute ago? A little stank on it on the G7. It's over by now. It's over now. He's gone off to Korea. But this the G7. It was the G8, G7, and now could be the G6, I guess. After that meeting,
G6 plus one.
G6 plus one. President Trump with the trade wars that he has started with Canada, Mexico, the EU, really every partner we have, President Trump has started a trade war with, and goes off to the G7 meeting, and right as he was leaving the White House to get on Air Force One, says, "I think we ought to invite Russia back." There was that little thing a couple of years ago, the invasion of Crimea. But
annexation.
Invasion of a foreign country, taking them, annex them. But we ought to let them back in. They need to be here. I think, and we're going to talk about this, I think that was a way for President Trump to insert himself at this meeting and take over the agenda. And he wanted to have the control over the agenda at the meeting. And by inserting that Russian thing, he took over the control of the meeting.
Well, I don't know if he was successful in taking over control of the meeting. He certainly took control of the press coverage back here in the United States. I don't know if that was successful from any diplomatic scorecard in the world. And we don't really know how all of this is playing in other parts of the world. We haven't seen that coverage, or I haven't.
But that's really all he cares about.
I have a feeling that it's horrible, and that he looks like an absolute idiot in Europe and, in the other participating countries. I just think that it was it's sad.
But
It's sad.
isn't all he cares about is what's happening here and the media coverage here? And if he takes the agenda away and they're only talking about that statement.
So, Chris, I think this is again about Trump dominating the agenda in the news cycle. Everybody I'm totally fatigued about this. When has the G7 ever become eventful? It's not been eventful unless there was a crisis going on in the world. And then we would go and we would meet with our friends, with emphasis on friends, and we would talk about those issues. Now we're talking about tariffs against our friends. These aren't people that we have issues with at least up until now. We have issues with our friends, and that's the thing that bothers me the most. But let's talk about winners and losers here. We're talking about if Trump continues to do what he's doing, we're talking about this is anti-consumer. Americans, at the end of the day, are going to have to pay more for their goods and their services. And that's the bottom line. And if people don't believe that, they need to look at who the winners and losers are. It's pro-producer, anti-consumer.
What do you think it'll mean when his farmer supporters and manufacturer supporters and people who have these the jobs that are going to suffer because of this trade war, are they going to continue to support the president in the 2020 election? Because that will tell us something, won't it?
Well, people have a history of voting against their own interests. So
yeah, but
it wouldn't surprise me.
And he may not be completely off the mark in talking about some of the tariffs that have been imposed by other countries are unfair. But the way to handle that is not the way he's done it. You handle that through diplomacy, not by embarrassing your friends or trying to pressure your friends or putting them in a really unbearable situation like he did with this meeting. And I think James's comment is absolutely on point in that these are our friends. This is supposed to be like a nice cocktail party, and you don't go to a nice cocktail party and take a big shit in the middle of the room. You just don't do that.
Let me ask this question because you stepped on my thunder. But let me.
Why do you want to talk about taking a big shit in the middle of the room?
No.
Thunder.
I was leave that to you. But
crop dusting
is the president right? I mean, is he right that Canada is charging 270% tariffs to our farmers? And is he right that China or Japan is charging all these tariffs to our steel industry? And is he right that we are paying a gross imbalance? And if he's right, then isn't he doing exactly what he said he was going to do when he ran for office?
Okay, that might be. He may be doing exactly what he said he was going to do.
Answer the first question. Is he right?
Well, I don't know if he's right because the point that I want to make is that global trade and tariffs is an issue that is extremely complicated. It is way too complicated for this president to have any decent understanding of what, in fact, he is doing. He is just slashing and burning. Somebody gave him a stat sheet, and he's just saying, well, let's cut this and let's cut that without any real understanding of what the implications are.
And then that's exactly right.
But more so than I just want the limelight and I just want to grab all the press, which he wants to do every 24-hour period. He must be the center of attention. You were 100% right about that. Yeah. What is more troubling to me is that not only is he behaving badly to our allies, he is cozying up with every dictator. Kim Jong-un is his best friend. So is Putin. If China's
now Kim is he's not his best friend yet.
No,
he's going to know in the first minute. We will know very, very soon because it's only going to take a minute.
All right, no, hang on, we're not there yet.
Yeah,
that's the next topic.
But the point is that our next topic? Yeah. I mean, I can wait until then.
I sent that out.
Okay, I don't have it memorized, but. He has nothing bad to say about He has nothing bad to say about people who have been our traditional adversaries, but he has everything bad to say, or nothing good to say to our allies. And I'm afraid that the country is going to end up being out there in a crisis on our own.
So he said, James, he said when he was running for office that he was going to attack the imbalance in trade. Now, you may not agree with the way he's doing it. And I'm not stumping for Trump at all, but he said this is what he was going to do. And if he's right, and I don't know if he's right, but if he's right that Canada is charging us 260% tariffs on our farmers, maybe I don't understand the North American Free Trade Agreement then, because that doesn't sound like free trade to me.
Right. So tariffs and trade are about reciprocal relationships. It's all symbiotic. I think that what Trump has is a case of cognitive dissonance. And basically, he went into...
Except for without the cognitive part.
That would be true. He has a little dissonance going on.
It's mostly dissonance. But what were we going to say?
I just totally lost my point.
Well, look, here's the thing.
Now, can I speak to something you said? Because it's really, really important. Because they are our allies. And those are friendships. And you call on those friendships. And when you're in difficult positions, you call on those friendships. And when you can't, it puts you in a very isolated position.
And what's going to happen when we really need something?
Right. Yeah. And we have found that when we have tried to go to war.
How do we repair this?
It's amazing. It's interesting that we have not had a real crisis yet to test this theory, and we don't want to test the theory because it's very frightening to think what the outcome would be, But every diplomacy is about relationships, right? Just like what you said, Campbell. And these are people. I mean, we're talking about human beings who get angry and who think that he's a buffoon and who, when he throws some craziness out there, Trudeau and Abe and Merkel and Macron, they try to come back with something measured and diplomatic and get their point across, but what are they saying?
But that picture,
that picture was classic.
Merkel and Trump.
Yes.
I mean,
when the mic is off,
all of them looking at him.
My goodness,
leaning over the table.
Did that paint 1,000 words or what?
What are we going to do about our enemies? And now the other countries are going, what are we going to do about the United States? And so there are two things playing out here. There's a public thing with Trump and his statements, and then hopefully behind the scenes there's some real discussions and some diplomacy going on that perhaps we don't know about.
But listen,
what, on our side?
On our side.
Well, who was doing it?
Yeah,
Bolton and Pompeo
I'm talking about Mnuchin is the commerce guy.
But even if
but did you hear what's his name, Kudlow? Yesterday.
Well, here's the thing. So again, Trump,
that's very hopeful.
Trump said, I'm not suggesting that is happening. I'm saying it may be playing out in some. So these types of issues to me are always kind of the window dressing for Trump, because we have to watch this government because he always, it's a sleight of hand kind of thing. What
James,
I'm trying to suggest.
I don't think that there is any real strategy here. Trump is
agree.
a one-man show.
I agree.
And whatever is going on in the background is just something trying to just react.
But the point I was going to make, he left the summit saying maybe we should do away with all tariffs. So who knows what to believe?
But how is that going to happen?
Yeah,
that's exactly
right. They've been an economic tool for as long as any of us can remember.
So we'll see how that plays out next week when the market wakes up.
Well, that's not. That was just a way to get out of there. Anyway, let's move on. I got to get out of here with my head on, so I'm leaving. Arrive late, and leave early, and let's see if we can move on. All right, he left the G7 early to go to the North Korean summit. You got to wonder why they set the North Korean summit up 2 days after the G7. But as he said, he doesn't have to prepare. It's all about attitude. And he's got the best attitude in the world. Just ask him; he'll tell you.
Phenomenal attitude.
Phenomenal attitude. It's the best
Beautiful attitude.
Beautiful attitude. Beautiful attitude.
Attitude ever. People don't know this, but
Everybody says.
It's lovely.
everybody says, yeah.
It's lovely.
His doctor included. I think that was in that.
It was in that
man.
letter. It was in that letter.
We're so lucky.
Now,
Best attitude ever.
One of the things that I've been saying this ever since the Bush II administration, at least, that we needed a new policy with respect to North Korea. I thought that we had waited too long to do something. I thought that our
To engage them one way or the other.
Yes, I thought that our policy of strategic waiting, or whatever it was called, was doing nothing while they built bomb after bomb and fired them over Japan. And so I thought we needed to do. I'm not saying, Chris Bell's looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm not saying that this is the policy, but I thought we needed more engagement and we needed to do something different. And so I was hopeful that when President Trump said he was going to get more aggressive, that something would happen. I don't know
So
what's
you're
going to happen here.
hopeful that Trump is meeting with a guy who likes Dennis Rodman.
He was right. Yeah, Dennis Rodman's there, so everything's fine. But what I did also like last week is President Trump at least began tamping down some expectations, because he was he moved a place on the shelf for the Nobel Peace Prize that he had already declared he won, and he was ready to get everything done. And he at least tamped down expectations. Somebody at least whispered in his ear and said, "You haven't done anything yet, sir."
Okay, let me tell you something. I'm married to a Swede. I spent a lot of time in Sweden. The Swedes are not going to give Donald Trump a Nobel
Well, it
Prize.
comes from Norway.
You heard this here that
You're showing some Trumpian qualities there. Canada did not burn down the White
the
House.
Nobel
And the Swedes
Nobel
only have those little fish.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's not true.
They'll
but-
still give him some chocolate. And now I say they'll still give him
Yeah.
some chocolate. And what do you say? That's the Dutch.
Let me put it this way. The Scandinavians are not going to give him a Nobel Prize.
There you go.
The Nobel
Bingo.
Prizes are Swedish. The Peace Prize is, you're right, it's the one that is from the Norwegians.
Yeah.
No one there is interested in giving Trump anything. But continue.
No, go ahead. Y'all just take it away.
Well,
that
I
was
think
my
that
setup.
I think that you're right. We needed to engage in order to be able to at least know what's going on with
Something
this
different.
program. But if we come out of this with not an agreement to go in, and I don't think that Kim Jong Il is going to allow us into his country.
He's dead, but
just
yeah.
on
Yeah.
Kim Jong.
Yeah. Just call him Kim.
You can be forgiven.
Yeah. Well.
Just
that-
call him
Doesn't
Kim.
Well, Kim is not going to let us into his country, so we could go in and identify and know what his nuclear stockpile. His whole advantage is his secrecy, and so to think that now we're going to somehow be allowed into this country to do that, this is going to be the same kind of game that he played with everybody else, where he basically gets a concession from Trump, and we start to, send goods and services over there to bring that country into the 21st century. We aren't going to get anything out of this but a photo op. That's
First
what
of
we're
all,
getting.
We don't
out
have
of it.
time
Kim
for that.
is
We just
not
need to bring him into
going-
the 17th century.
You're not referring to China, are you?
I'm referring to North Korea.
Kim is not going to give up nuclear weapons. They
That's
looked
not.
at Saddam Hussein, they looked at Gaddafi, and they said, "What is the benefit of giving up your nukes? There isn't any." So basically, Trump dismantled the Iran deal, which was a decent deal, and he's going to get a worse deal out of North Korea, or no deal.
Or no deal.
But
No deal.
But if I can just give a shout, I'm so glad you brought that up, because if I can just get a shout out for myself, which I like to do anyway, but really more for my congressional staff, I think this is fascinating. In 2003 or probably 2004, because it was after we had gone into Iraq. And my legislative director, Justin Hamilton, I had a fantastic staff, and he was brilliant. And I forget even what the hearing was about. But he said basically the American policy, it appears, it certainly wasn't written, but it certainly appears the American policy has become that if you have nuclear weapons or the capability, we are not going to attack you, we are not going to mess with you, and if you don't, we will. and it had been proven in Afghanistan, it had been proven to Iraq, and just the other day, I saw an episode of Vice on HBO, and there was a general saying that has become the American policy. That is exactly what's become. And now with Libya, of course.
Yeah, and Kim is
what people
aware
are
of
looking-
this.
He'd be an idiot.
Right.
I mean, why would he give that up? And then Trump says, well, if he doesn't give that up, it's a non-starter. Then why are you going?
Well, Kim gets the legitimacy that is bestowed upon the country because he's
getting everything he wanted.
He's getting everything he wants. But I do not have a problem with Trump going over there and visiting and talking with the North Korean leader. But the same people who are praising Trump for being such an incredible diplomat gave Barack Obama holy hell for even suggesting that he would talk to Iran during the campaign before
or even North Korea
But during the Obama presidency, I never felt in fear of going to war with North Korea.
Yeah.
And so part of this feels to me sort of like the arsonist who lights the house on fire and then goes to put it out and says, I'm a hero.
Yeah.
He's the one who went to the extraordinary step of going to the United Nations and engaging in name calling, which
changed?
I don't ever remember a president doing in my lifetime. Calling
has
him
it changed a little bit, though? I mean, is the urgency a little bit changed?
I thought he called him Little Kim.
Little Rocket Man.
Rocket Man.
Little Rocket Man.
Okay.
Little Rocket
But
Man.
has the
Little Kim
urgency
is already
changed a
taken,
little
right?
bit, though, since Obama was president?
Because of their nuclear capability increasing?
Yeah.
Probably.
And their ability to deliver a bomb has changed. I mean, they have improved, and so I think that something needs to be done. I don't know that going over there without an agenda is the way to go, but
I mean, improved in the sense of they've got more. Their nuclear power is more.
Their ability,
their capabilities,
their delivery capability is improved.
Well, but look,
I
it
just
doesn't
don't
really
think
matter
diplomacy
if
is a kid's game, though.
It doesn't matter if there's an agenda because we've seen time and time again that Trump can be given talking points and a briefing and have everything explained to him, and then he goes over there and just says whatever off the top of his head, whatever if he saw something on television, that's what he's going to talk about when he goes in there. So I don't have any delusion that.
So do you?
And
expect,
then can I just say, months ago or weeks ago when this started being discussed, I sent out a tweet as a complete joke. I found a picture of Dennis Rodman and Kim and put it up on Twitter about, I hope he'll be involved as a joke. And now he's going.
Yeah, he's going to be there.
Well,
I think
the
and
administration,
James talked about earlier, that speaks volumes.
The administration was quick to say that he was not invited, but he's going. He's going to be there. He'll be in the sidelines, ready to jump in and help out.
He was on Celebrity Apprentice. He has qualifications.
We know that it's hard to make jokes during
does
this
anybody?
presidency.
What do you? Just real quick, we're going to close this out. But real quick, what do you expect from this, other than a photo op? Anything?
Nothing.
Oh, I think they'll have some grand announcement that we're going to work together and try to make people feel like something came out of it.
Do you remember that Houston slogan, expect the unexpected?
All right, let's go to our last topic here, the looming battle. There's a battle looming for the midterm elections. There's so much that's really shaping up on the midterms here that are going to affect this. And I think that aside from the Korean thing that's going on right now, the summit and all of that there's two things that are going to affect this over above anything else is the healthcare situation that's going on in the country and the inability of the Trump administration just last week announcing that they were going to allow the mandate to die a natural death, and what's happening with the economy. I think we're going to talk about those first, then we're going to move into some other topics. But I think those are the two biggest things that are going to affect the midterm.
I have no idea what's going to affect the midterm.
Neither do I.
Primarily Donald Trump. And it's always the sitting president that influences the midterm, and that's why I feel really good about Democrats' chances in November.
People
keep wanting to talk about the blue wave dwindling.
No, I'm not talking about that. But with Mitt Romney last week, I did cut you off. Mitt Romney last week said that Donald Trump would be reelected.
I disagree with that. But what I don't want the Democrats to focus on is impeachment. I think that's a non-starter. Right. I do think that Democrats need to figure out what they're going to be as a party. You have 72% of Democrats and independents who basically want a progressive agenda. So what does that mean? Does that mean health care for all? Does that mean, doing something about the dreamers? Does that mean going out and talking to the working class man and the poor and coming up with a way to bring them into the fold? We have to figure that out, and I don't think the Democrats have that message. Number two, I think that they need to figure out who the leadership's going to be. I personally think that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have become, arbitrages and on the Democratic Party because one is from California and the other is from New York. For people in middle,
and they're old, and they've been there forever.
Yeah, and people in middle America.
You failed to say white.
Well, people in middle America
for
don't really
saying it for me.
Connect with those two. And when you send those people out to connect with people in Texas and people in Kansas and those southern states in middle America, they don't get it, Chris. And so we need to figure out as Democrats who we're going to be. I don't think we know. I don't think we resolved that argument after the election.
Don't you think it's time for the Democratic Party to start looking at new, younger leadership?
Well, as far as leadership goes, I don't know, but I mean they've certainly recruited a lot of new, younger candidates. One of the problems in the midterm is the fact that a lot of the candidates are women, and they've done very well in the primaries. And we have that situation here in Houston. I think you're seeing it across the United States. And the new poll comes out that women may not fare as well against men in certain instances, and so that kind of creates a.
Chris, for our audience, can you talk about the congressional Democratic primary race between Laura Moser?
Well, it was sort of fascinating here in Houston because we have one of the pivotal races, or a race that's being watched nationally. John Culberson, a long-time, very conservative member of Congress, being challenged by, I think there were 6 or 7 candidates in the Democratic primary, and then there ended up being a runoff by one woman who really identified with certainly with the Bernie Sanders movement and a more liberal Laura Moser, more liberal side of the Democratic Party, and Lizzie Fletcher, who, full disclosure, I supported from the beginning, and who they kept calling a traditional Democrat.
Bill, are you a centrist Democrat?
Well, what's so funny is that now I'm a traditional Democrat. I've been in this fight, and I'd like for some of these young people to understand what that's like to having been a Democrat for the last 20 or 30 years here in the state of Texas. There's nothing traditional about it. When you're living in an 80 or 70 or 60 or whatever it is red state, it's pretty freaking tough to be a Democrat.
It's disheartening.
I'm tired of being called a traditionalist.
It's disheartening. Now, if Democrats are sitting back waiting on the Mueller investigation to affect this midterm, are they making a mistake?
I think they're making a mistake. I think that people have tuned out the Mueller investigation. I want to go back to something that Chris said about women being a problem. I understand that you're not saying that the fact that women are the problem, but there's been some indication that women don't fare as well in a straight up contest against a man. But that is no reason for the party to not support its women candidates. We've done that for too long to say, well, the time's not right because people aren't ready because that's bullshit and that's over with. We're not doing that anymore. Women are going to run because women want to run. They have leadership skills. They're good at the job, and frankly, they have a better understanding of some issues just because they are not the they're not in the.
They're smarter.
They're
just saying. You're just trying to shy away from it. They're smarter. And they're better at sizing up things a lot of times, especially in this day and age.
You know, they have some disadvantages from being women, from misogyny, gender discrimination, and that sort of thing. And when you're on the receiving end of that, you have some understanding that men just don't have.
Well, it's kind of like the comedian who talks about why is it when there are too few checkers at the supermarket, it's always the woman who goes over and finds the manager and says, why don't you get some more fucking checkers over here? I mean, that's what women do.
Yeah,
they kind of look for ways to fix things.
Yeah,
and for too long, we've overlooked that, and they should have their shot.
Yeah, and I don't really give a damn if there's some consultant telling politicians that, or you know, people, other consultants don't have the woman because she's not going to fare as well. That is ridiculous. Women need to run. Men lose all the time. You know, and women.
Oh, are you just saying that because of present company? And just to be clear, Andy would say, "Why don't you get some more fucking checkers up here?" My wife, on the other hand, would handle it in a much more genteel.
Before we run out of time on this, let's just talk about the failure of Congress to fix the DACA problem. Is that going to affect the midterm? I mean, the Republicans, the House is 3 votes from forcing the issue. Paul Ryan said that he wanted to come up with a Republican-only fix, had a meeting last week and couldn't do it. Could not put it together. And so if they can't fix this, is this going to have an impact? James?
It's hard to say because I think that most Americans want to do the right thing on this, but it's really hard to say. I think we really need to figure out a way how to continue mobilizing the Hispanic vote in this country and really make this an issue that resonates across the Democratic Party as well as moderate to independent-leaning Republicans.
But it goes further than DACA. I mean, they're going door to door in predominantly Hispanic apartment complexes, ripping up families. This is going to get worse before it gets better.
It really could be the sleeper issue.
And I think most people look at DACA and feel like that was extremely fair. What the Obama administration
but Chris, I
did.
also think that there are a lot of variables in this that we don't know. There's some unknowns, like what's going to happen with the economy if tariffs really get imposed. There's so many things that could be a variable and people are so in the moment now. Whatever the topic of the day is in the moment, I think will drive the election. I really do.
I have to disagree there because I think that people dug in a long time ago after President Trump was elected and are horrified by this presidency. And I don't see that going away. And I know that there are commentators that want to say the blue wave is dwindling and becoming a ripple and what have you. I think I said that earlier, and I hate to repeat myself, but I just don't think that's the case. From what I see, being on the ground, going to events, listening to folks, people are still very, very upset, and I don't think it matters what happens in Singapore or what happens with DACA or anything else. I think they're always going to be very fearful of this presidency.
I think so. I tend to agree with you. I really do not think that this is going to be an election that has much to do with specific issues so much as Democrats are upset with the status quo. But the problem, and also I think that the last few presidential elections have shown us that polling means nothing. Yes. We do not understand anything from looking at a poll. Wrong about Obama, wrong about Hillary versus Trump. The polls just are not, the polling organizations have not figured out this a new paradigm to deal with cell phones and young people and people not having landlines and that sort of thing. What is discouraging is I feel like we should have seen more voters coming out in these primaries.
Well,
the primary turnout was still low.
Right.
That was discouraging to me because it should have been hot and heavy, and it doesn't.
And you had a lot of money in it in California and Texas.
Yes, and a lot of enthusiasm, and everyone was so excited, and the blue wave, and then
Yeah.
if the Hispanics aren't mad now, they're never going to get mad. And I don't know
I
what
feel
it
like
takes.
people are
I don't know what
discouraged.
it takes. So, all right. Well, that's all the time we have today. We're going to move right into Out of Left Field. Who's going first?
So in 1959, the Children of the Confederacy installed a plaque at the Texas Capitol that basically commemorated Confederate soldiers and said this was about honor. That plaque still stands. It needs to come down. Joe Strauss, to his credit, who is the speaker, Republican Speaker of the Texas House, has joined other voices in saying that it needs to come down. This is a disgrace that this plaque still stands, and it's inaccurate and it's dishonest. Bring it down.
Good point. My out of left field is Bill Clinton. You know, when the Monica Lewinsky scandal was happening,
First black president.
Yeah, well, you know what? It makes me a little sick to even think about that at this point, because the first black president the real first black president was so much better
Yes.
than the so-called first black president. At any rate, I defended the president. I said this Monica Lewinsky thing was no big deal. It was sex, and we're too prude. And the important thing is governing and policies. And Ken Starr was just on a witch hunt. And I remember having conversations with friends of mine in the past about what are we going to look back on 10 or 20 years from now as being the thing that we just had a big blind spot for. And we thought, fat people are the people that, we're going to look back and say, why did we fat shame? But we were so blind, and we thought we were good feminists, to the idea that this man is probably, Bill Clinton is more than likely a rapist. He's definitely a sexual predator. And whether it was consensual or not between Monica Lewinsky and the president, the fact that we were so ready to dismiss Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones and all the other number of women who came out and accused the president, my mind has been completely changed on this issue, and my opinion of Bill Clinton is very low. That's my out of left field. He's not the man we thought he was.
All right, mine's about politics. Imagine that. I'm really tired of the Republicans and the Democrats, the way that our country is being run. And I've said this before, not on this show because we didn't have it, but I've said this before many times that it's time for a third party in the United States, one that can take enough seats in the House and the Senate so that no single party can take control of our government again, and that anytime someone needs something done, they have to go through somebody else to get something passed. And I think that's a better way to run our country, because the way we're running it right now, it's being run by bullies, and I'm sick of it. And so it's time for a third party to get some seats in the House and the Senate. And that is my out of left field.
This week marked the 50th anniversary of the tragic assassination of Bobby Kennedy. And at lunch on Friday, a friend of mine, Colin Cox, raised the topic that what if that had not occurred? What if he had been able to go on from California and have been elected president, and what a different world and what a different America it would have been. No Richard Nixon. Instead, most likely, a president with a complete grasp of civil rights and poverty in the United States, like few around him. And I know there's no magic time machine, and you can't redo history, but it really is an extraordinary thought. He's always been a hero of mine, and I have often quoted during my time in politics his speech, the that incredible night that Martin Luther King was killed in April of 1968, just a few months before Bobby Kennedy was murdered in June of 1968. And he had been warned it was going to be an overwhelmingly African-American crowd in Indianapolis, and he had been warned that there would probably be rioting and there could be violence, and he was told not to go, but he went anyway, and he threw away his stump speech, and he spoke extemporaneously, and many agree it's one of the greatest speeches from the modern era, and I would encourage anyone to go look it up on Google, but I just want to share one passage from it, from that fateful night. Bobby Kennedy. My favorite poet was Aeschylus. He wrote, "In our sleep, pain, which cannot forget, falls drop by drop upon the heart until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or they be black. So I shall ask you tonight to return home, to say a prayer for the family of Martin Luther King, that's true, but more importantly, to say a prayer for our country, which all of us love, a prayer for understanding and that compassion of which I spoke. And it's a prayer we still very much need today.
All right, that's all the time we have this week. We'll be back next week and every week. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to rate us on iTunes. Much thanks to Keegan DeLeo producing this show. Thank you very much, Keegan. That's it. This is What's Left America. Have a great week.